Good evening, everyone. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitaraman has presented interim budget for financial year 2024-25. Yeah, so the first thing first is what is relevant in this budget for UPSC aspirant. This is the agenda of our session tonight. So I am not going to cover each and every item which was there in the budget speech. Neither I am going to cover the bulky budget document in totality. Rather, we are only going to cover the section or that type of things which have been asked in the past by UPSC and which have very high probability of being asked again. Okay, so if you have already studied by me in your classes economy, you would get some similarity, some aspect was already covered, or only updation of those aspect would be done with this year's budget document. Okay, and one more thing is that since all of you are watching it live online as well, it's not a proper classroom kind of thing. So I would be going a little faster, but definitely I would be addressing your doubts. I would request you again that you have to promptly give me the answers. Okay, all your hands on keyboard only. In Article 112, we have annual financial statement, and I was telling you that in this annual financial statement, we do not have the name budget. This you might have already studied, that the word budget is not there in our constitution. Okay, the next thing that is there is that this annual financial statement is to be presented by the President of India. So word finance minister is also not mentioned anywhere in our constitution. Okay, so these are certain things which you need to be aware. Now the second thing that this article 112 says is that the annual financial statement said clearly demarcate the revenue budget from capital budget. रेवेन्यू अकाउंट एंड कैपिटल अकाउंट को अलग से शो किया जाएगा. Okay, this is one thing which is said, and the second thing which is mentioned here is that in this article itself that there are certain expenditure which would be in the nature of charged expenditure. Can you tell me which are those charged expenditure? Which are those expenditure which are categorized as charged expenditure in our constitution? And for those charged expenditure, you might be aware that charged expenditure are not voted in the Lok Sabha. They are directly, they are debated, discussed, but not voted. So, ineffectively, the Lok Sabha does not have the power to restrict or decrease this expenditure. So, these are the statements which are there from Constitution itself. Then, Constitution has the next article. Yes, interest payment is there. This salary of the Supreme Court judges, salary of the Vice President of India, President of India, and the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of Lok Sabha. So these are the expenditure which is there in the part of charged expenditure. If you are not able to recall it, note down in your notes somewhere in the side that you have to remember this charged expenditure part. Okay. So budget documents से directly question नहीं आएगा. There is very less chances that a direct question would be asked what was there in the budget 2024. However, there is very high probability that something which you will be able to recall. This is also a medium or occasion for revision. Okay, so a lot many things that we shall discuss in today's session would be useful for your revision purposes. Go back and revise these things as well. Then we shall go to Article 113. Article 113 mentions about demand for grant. This is part of expenditure. Okay. Then we have Article 114. This mentions about appropriation bill. So appropriation bill is separate thing. Demand for grant is separate thing. Appropriation bill is holistically the whole annual financial statement. The expenditure part of annual financial statement is called appropriation bill. But this appropriation bill consists of a lot many small grants. Okay, and all those individual grants are discussed one after another, and then this provision is mentioned in Article 113. In this year budget, there were 102 demands for grant. Okay, so usually this is norm. This is not always true. I am again saying it. Usually, there is one demand for grant for every department. But again, I am saying for some departments, there could be more than one demand for grant as well. So this is how, this is the constitutional scheme. Then there is something called 110(1)(a). This mentions about finance bill. But you might be wondering, yes, sir, 110 article is about money bill. This says that all the items mentioned in Article 110, they would be part of money bill. So now from here we can make the conclusion that finance bill is also a kind of money bill. What is finance bill? Finance bill is counterpart of appropriation bill. Appropriation bill is about expenditure. Finance bill is about income. Finance bill is different from financial bill. Financial bill is similar to money bill. Finance bill is simply one of the variety of money bill. Okay, so go and also read the difference between finance bill and financial bill. Okay, now there is something called vote on account, which is mentioned in Article 116. And few days before the budget, our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitaraman has given a statement that this interim budget is not of much concern because this is just a vote on account. Well, she was technically not right, because vote on account just have the expenditure part, and that too for a limited period of time. Whereas, as you might have already seen, or I will show you in this current session, that this interim budget that we have has both income as well as expenditure part. We will see how the government has shown income part as well. So first difference between interim budget and vote on account is that this vote on account has only expenditure, interim budget has both. Then vote on account is only for the limited period, say 2 months or 4 months. In fact, in this in her speech, Nirmala Sitaraman did not make it clear for how many months she is asking for vote on account. Okay, it would be known, I mean, maybe in detail reading it would be available. Whereas interim budget as such has all the data for the whole financial year. This is also something which is a common misconception, that interim budget has only data or provisions for say 2 months or 3 months. That's not true. If a new government is not able to take, is able to come to power, it may happen that there is a hung parliament. In that case, these provisions which were part of this interim budget will continue to be in force for the whole of the financial year. Vote on account is mentioned in our constitution, Article 116, whereas interim budget, this word is nowhere mentioned in our constitution. Now let's move to the next aspect, that is a structure of our budget. Now, as we have already seen, that our constitution says that each demand of grant would be categorized into voted expenditure and charged expenditure. Second part is between revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. And the third is grand total. So each demand for grant, as I have told you, that there are 102 of them, and all of them would be categorized into two parts: voted expenditure and charged expenditure, revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, and then the grand total. This is how the whole budget is categorized. Now, if we look at the ministry wise, so for any ministry, there is the total expenditure. Now, this total expenditure would be either central government expenditure, or some money would be transferred to a state or union territory. Okay, this is the two possibilities. Either central government spends it on its own, or it spends through some state or union territory. And one more thing, all the central government expenditure would be part of expenditure by some ministry. It cannot happen. The expenditure is happening by and which is not part of any ministry. So all expenditure would fall in the expenditure of some ministry, and ministry can do it either on its own or through by transferring it to the state or union territory. Now, the own expenditure could be either establishment expenditure like the salaries of the IS officer. I mean your salary that will come. So salary of running this department or ministry. Second is central sector schemes. There are various central sector schemes are there. Those schemes are running. One of give me some example of central sector schemes. The third would be some central public sector enterprises, their expenditure, or some autonomous bodies, their expenditure. So all this will be part of central's expenditure. Then transfer to a state union territory. This could be through centrally sponsored scheme or through finance commission transfer, or some other kind of transfer like to the states, like some grants are given, a special status is given. All such things are there which comes under part of transfer to a state union territory. So this is how the whole budget is categorized. I did not get any answer from you people. Oh, MG Narega is not a central sector scheme. MG Narega is centrally sponsored scheme. Here MG Narega would form. PM Kisan will form here. Will fall here. Now, in any budget, there is data for 3 financial years. This is a very standard question which can be asked, or this is also asked in interview as well. Chalo, I will show you later. The first is the data for the coming financial year. Okay. Yeah, please check. A lot of good answers are there, which you people are sending to me. See, the simple concept is that if a state government is also involved, for example, PM Awas Yojana is a centrally sponsored scheme, because in this scheme there is a state government contribution as well. Okay, but if a state government contribution is not there, there is no role for the state government vis-a-vis financial matters. Okay, that scheme is only central sector scheme. Okay. Now let's come to this. There are 3 years data. One is the data that you see, which is called, as you can see, first is data which is called budget estimate. Here this word budget estimate would be written. This is for the next year, next financial year budget. The budget is for 2024-25. So budget estimate is for 2024-25. Then there would be revised estimate for last year data, because last year also some budget was presented, but through the course of the financial year the government may realize that probably we are not going to achieve the target, or probably we need to spend more money. For example, in MG Narega they have overshot the last year's assessment. It might happen that in MG Narega the demand is more because there was a drought. So if the more, because it's a guarantee, so government would have to incur the expenditure. So government revises its last year estimate in this year budget. Okay, but still as on today, even on 1st of February 2024, the financial year 2023-24 is not complete. That financial year is still going on. So that's why its actual numbers, the actual expenditure would only be known in next year budget. So last to last year's actual numbers are also presented here. Now this financial year 2022-23 is now complete. It was completed on 31st March 2023. So now this data is also presented in this year budget. Is it clear? Is there any confusion? Then let me know that there are 3 years data, and all these data are different from each other. They are not same. One is about actual data, one is revised estimate. This was last year data. So this is not a new data. This is new data. This is new data. Is it clear? Just let me know. And this I have just simply taken in for an example purposes, like demand number 1 is for Department of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare. Okay, and in this case, there is first center expenditure, as I have told you. Then within center expenditure, there is establishment expenditure, central sector schemes. There would be third as well. And then there would be this transfer to the state. So the mechanism that I just conveyed to you, that this is how whole budget is structured, same you can witness here as well. Now here I will also show you one more thing. Like last year revised estimate is also around say in case of demand number 1, it is 1,16,000. This year they are presenting 1,17,000. So this gives us a picture that this estimate, although it's an interim budget, the estimate is for the full financial year. Okay, so in case it may happen for any reason that the new government is not able to take shape, or new government does not present a full-fledged budget after the election, then this budget would be effective for whole of the financial year. Okay, there is no expiry date of this interim budget. So the purpose of showing all these things is that you should be able to visualize how this budget document is, how this budget is prepared, how different scheme expenditure are there. I do not want you to memorize any of these data. Only you have to understand, make a picture clear in your mind how these different data are categorized. Okay, whatever you need to memorize, I will tell you. So do not worry. That's my duty. Now we shall come to this part. What is the expenditure and what is the income? That's the whole thing about that's the crux of the budget. Okay, one more thing is there, that this was an interim budget. Okay, so this was less of a budget, more of a report card of the government. And report card was also like the in whole of the budget speech, our finance minister keep on comparing what we did in 10 years and what they did before that. We versus them was the whole speech. So all the data that we have is in this format only. Here, how as an UPSC aspirant, how we are going to utilize this data? So we are going to utilize it in the way that few of the schemes are important one. Few of the schemes are on the basis of certain themes which are part of UPSC syllabus. We would have to memorize those data only. That we would be able to show that this is the growth that we have achieved in last 10 years. In exam, we are not going to compare. Okay, we are not a BJP candidate in Lok Sabha election, right? So we are not going to compare what was achievement in this 10 year vis-a-vis last 10 year. We are going to remember that these are our achievement. Wherever we have to show that we are growing, we will use those figures. Okay. Navneet Giri has a doubt. Please explain what is interim budget. Interim budget is a budget presented by a government in transition. So if a government believes that it is not going to complete the full financial year, it brings about an interim budget, that the full budget would be presented later on. Okay, so this is like this budget would be superseded by another budget in this financial year itself. That's why by convention government is giving the name interim budget. Okay, so like this budget is going to be, I mean the finance minister has itself announced that we will be presenting a new budget after the election. They are confident that they are going to come to the power. Okay, so since this budget is going to be superseded by another budget, this is a interim budget. Interim matlab for the time being. So for the time being, we have presented a budget. Major changes would happen later on. Is it clear, Navneet? What is the difference? This is good doubt. I was expecting it to be asked. These numbers which are presented here, budget 2023-24, these are the data which was given in last year budget. So last year when finance minister has presented the budget, she has proposed that the total expenditure would be 1,15,531 crore. Okay, whereas actual expenditure that has happened is 1,16,788 crore. So actual can always be different. इतना बड़ा देश है, डेफिनेटली देयर वुड बी सम डिफरेंस. जो आप प्लान करोगे एक साल में उतना हो जरूरी नहीं है. ठीक है. सो दिस वाज लास्ट ईयर डेटा विच वाज प्रेजेंटेड इन द बजट व्हेन बजट वाज प्रेजेंटेड, एंड नाउ द डेटा स्टैंड्स रिवाइज्ड. नेक्स्ट ईयर, I mean after there is 2 months are still left in this financial year, so in 2 months हो सकता है कि ये 1,16,000 के बजाय 1,17,000 हो जाए. Okay, so in next year the finance minister will present the actual budget, and in actual 2023-24 the number would change to 1,17,000. Okay, so this is the concept of budget estimate. This was last year budget estimate, and this is revised estimate. This word you will see, RE, revised estimate. Okay, now is it clear, Yogesh? Yes, vote on account is part of every budget. Usually for last 3 years a vote on account was not being presented. Since we have started presenting our budget on 1st of February, the vote of account was not required. So that's why for last few years vote on account was not coming. This year vote on account is there. So finance minister in her speech, she has mentioned that I also be needing a vote on account. Now let's see from where does government do this expenditure. Okay, now the biggest element, see all these numbers you need not memorize. What you need to memorize is that the biggest element in this expenditure is, the first is a state share of taxes and duties. Now this is not relevant because this is mostly based on the finance minister finance commission recommendation. Nothing much can be done. Now the most important thing is that biggest element is interest payment. Now you please tell me whether interest payment falls in revenue account or capital account, or rather it is the revenue expenditure or capital expenditure. Now the next biggest item after the interest payment is, if you look at this, central sector scheme. The third biggest, there are this other item, this which are clubbed, so this is not important. The important is that finance commission transfer and other transfer. Okay, so this is being said separately. Finance commission, as you might be remembering, that finance commission recommends about this state government share. At the same time, a state government some transfer is also recommended. So they are being put separately. Yes, you are right. Revenue expenditure. Now the third most important is like defense has same amount of expenditure as centrally sponsored scheme. If not same, similar. So defense and centrally sponsored schemes are joint third, and then comes the subsidies. So this ranking you need to memorize. Okay. This, if you remember, like pensions are a small portion and they are going to reduce further because we have gone into new pension scheme. Okay, so this is what you need to remember. Now, what is the total size of budget? This is something, that question that should have come to your mind. How much does government spend? And the number is 47.66 lakh crore. So the budget 2024-25, the government proposes that in this financial year, we shall be doing 47.66 lakh crore expenditure. ठीक है, just इतना लिख लो. I mean, I will be sharing this PPT. Okay, don't worry. I will be sharing this PPT on my Telegram channel. So from that, there you can download it. And the link of Telegram channel is there in the description of the video. Just listen to me, because see, this is the graph which I have taken from the government's budget document itself. So government has made this graph, and see, one more thing is problematic here. Like this centrally sponsored scheme 8% seems as big as this state share 20%. So probably government has not carefully made this diagram. I have simply taken from there only. ठीक है, other expenditure is actually clubbed together. There are many expenditure which have been collectively clubbed as other expenditure. That's why it's not an important aspect. Okay. There is one more thing which is there. The government has come up with a scheme. Now the scheme is that the central government would provide 50-year interest-free loan for capital expenditure. Who would get this loan? A state government. So the central government would give loan to the state government, which would be interest free, means the state government would not have to pay any interest on this. And the state government can only spend this loan for some kind of capital expenditure, and the repayment period is also very high, that is 50 year, 50. Now can you explain me, if you can understand it, what is the clever thing which has been done here? This is effectively a kind of, I mean, if you are given money on which you do not have to pay interest, you will immediately take that money, because if you have taken 100 rupee today and you are returning 100 rupee after 50 years, effectively probably you are only returning 10 rupees, because 50 year down the line, the 10 rupee today will have the same value as 100 rupees 50 year down the line. Okay, so effectively it's a kind of grant which is given by the central government. Okay, but since it's a kind of loan, it would come under the capital expenditure of central government. Okay, so earlier central government used to say that there is something called effective revenue deficit. What was the argument of central government? That some part of this grant given to the state government is used for capital expenditure. So that should not be counted as revenue deficit, because that is actually a capital expenditure. So government say that let's be smarter. People are not buying this idea. So why don't you simply convert this revenue expenditure into capital expenditure? So government has very smartly, central government has converted a revenue expenditure into capital expenditure. This is a kind of grant only, but now that it is a loan, it would be counted under capital expenditure. Are you able to understand this? If you are able to understand this, this has a lot of economic concept in it. It has the concept of time value of money. It has the concept of what kind of expenditure is in revenue expenditure, what is capital expenditure. So if you are able to understand this, you have understood economics very well. Just let me know if you have understood it. And maybe in 1 or 2 days, the Hindu will point it out. I have pointed it out earlier. The Hindu will also definitely point it out. One more thing that I would like to say, that in budget, everything that you will be seeing in the tomorrow's newspaper is positive only, because this is something which is presented by the government, and government is always going to, which is said like कि दूध की नदियां बहा रहे हैं, ठीक है, all good things. But the days after that, when, like it is said that devil lies in detail. So when detail would be dig up by various newspaper, Indian Express, the Hindu, they will come up with this counter argument. Okay? So Nachatra did not get it. I am simply explaining it. See, when it is a 50-year interest-free loan, effectively it is a grant. Because if you are getting 100 rupee today and you are returning it after 50 years without any interest payment, effectively after 50 years probably you are returning only 10 rupees. So kind of you have got 90 rupees as grant. So when central government gives grant, it is counted as revenue expenditure, and it is central government is criticized that your revenue expenditure is high, your revenue deficit is high, whereas capital deficit is generally considered good thing. So central government has simply converted its revenue expenditure into capital expenditure by giving a 50-year interest-free loan to the state government. Okay. Yes, it will. I mean, theoretically, the government debt would increase, but since the debt is of a very long duration, there is no financial stability issue. And this is an internal debt, central government to a state government. So that's in from that perspective as well, there is no such issue. Next aspect. This is the data that government has said that the revenue expenditure of the government has continuously increased in absolute terms. Okay, actual expenditure, budget estimate, which was the estimate last year, and a revised estimate, and this year budget estimate. So the government is estimating that this year the revenue expenditure would be more. The government has also come up with this term. I mean, it's not a new term, but this year it has been highlighted. Effective capital expenditure. Okay, so this is normal capital expenditure. Here I would like to say one thing, like the government is doing some smart thing. We also do something smart thing. In budget, you have to look for 3 T. First is terms. If there is new terms means something which is not very much, which you have not studied. Okay, because the term is not new. Probably you are not unknown. You were not aware of this. So first T is terms. Second T is trends. If there is any trend which is being followed or not followed. And the third thing is turbulence. Like where is government bringing about some change? Those are the areas from where UPSC asks questions. So you have to look for these 3 T's. Now first, this term, effective capital expenditure. If you do not know, please write it down. It is the sum of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is also called CapEx, plus the capital expenditure done by a state government from center's grant. Okay, so it's like grant which is given for asset creation. So if a grant is given for asset creation, that should be ideally counted as capital expenditure, because this expenditure is used for asset creation. But since it's a grant, it is counted as revenue expenditure. So this is effective capital expenditure. And you can say that there is no consistent trend. Consistent trend in the sense that from budget estimate, the revised estimate says that effective capital expenditure has reduced. So the government has surpassed its revenue expenditure estimate, whereas it has missed its capital expenditure estimates. So government has not done enough capital expenditure. Okay, this is the analysis that you should note, that was vis-a-vis last year budget estimate, the government surpassed its revenue expenditure but not able to meet its effective capital expenditure. More importantly, this definition is important. This can be asked. Yeah, Sandhya, I completely echo your feeling, and more so when I will be discussing the taxation aspect. Sandhya is saying that it's the middle class which watches the debate more eagerly and gets nothing. Okay. Next, this is like allocation of different ministries. Which minister has got how much of money? And the biggest gainer is Ministry of Defense. Ministry of Defense has got 6.2 lakh crore. Ministry of Defense is the largest employer as well. Largest employer in India is also Ministry of Defense. Okay, Ministry of Road Transport and Highway is the second one. Ministry of Road Transport and Highway has got 2.78 lakh crore. The Ministry of Railway comes at the third. Then not important. ठीक है, तो टॉप 2-3 हमें याद रखना है. ये नंबर भी हमें याद नहीं रखने. Numbers are not important. Only ranking is important. Now let's move to the next part. Okay, now we shall move to the income part. From where does government get the income? Now the government, the total receipt that the government gets, the one could be this borrowing, another could be non-borrowing. So debt and non-debt. First criteria between the source of income is this. How much is government's debt? Debt is same as borrowing. which is also as deficit, which total we call at fiscal deficit. Okay, and then there's non-net. Non-debt can be in two category. One is revenue, another is capital. Give me few examples. Which are the revenue receipt items and which are the capital receipt item? Few example, please give. Till the time I will tell the other things. So you tell me. This is like borrowing and other liabilities. ये capital में जाएगा, revenue में जाएगा. So borrowing and other liabilities, whatever they are coming, this would come since it's a change in asset and liability. That's the definition. So it would be part of capital account. Okay. Then all these, this is some other non-debt capital receipts. So this will also go to capital account. All these other taxes go into revenue account. ठीक है, सिंपल सा चीज है. टैक्सेस गो इनटू रेवेन्यू. सो दिस इज आल्सो रेवेन्यू. दिस इज इनकम टैक्स, एक्साइज टैक्स, कॉर्पोरेशन टैक्स, जीएसटी एंड अदर टैक्स, कस्टम ड्यूटी एंड अदर नॉन टैक्स रिसीट्स आर आल्सो रेवेन्यू रिसीट्स. Okay, so if you do simple addition, it is like only 28 plus 1, 29% is capital receipt. So revenue receipt is much more than capital receipt. This is the first conclusion that we can draw, that revenue receipt is much more than capital receipt. The second thing that we can draw is, we need to draw is whether direct taxes are more or indirect taxes are more. Okay, so let's see. Direct tax is income tax and corporation tax. These two are direct taxes. Their sum total is 46%. This is direct taxes. No, 36%, sorry. Now indirect taxes, 5%, 18%. 18 or 5? 23. 23 and 4? 27. So indirect taxes are 27%. So here direct taxes is also more than indirect taxes. In fact, this year there is one term which has come, which has been used, tax buoyancy. So in case of direct taxes, the government has witnessed tax buoyancy. There is very high growth in direct tax collection. Okay, I will also make you write down the definition of tax buoyancy, don't worry. So the direct tax collection has increased very rapidly in this financial year. So now the gap between direct taxes and indirect taxes are growing. Okay, still from both these aspects like income tax or corporate tax or any other taxation, this borrowing is the largest item. Most of our expenditure is done through borrowing. So first item is borrowing. Second item is, which is the second one? Income tax. Third item is GST. And fourth item is corporation tax. Rest of the things are small, need not remember. So this ranking can also be asked. This is something that you have to memorize. First is borrowing. If borrowing is not given in the list, the first is income tax, second is GST, third is corporation tax. Okay, and then at the fourth position, there are non-tax receipts. Between excise and custom also you need to memorize that excise is more than custom. So custom is imposed on the import and export. Excise is on usually from the petroleum products. So we have more taxes on petroleum goods. So excise duty collection is more than the custom duty collection. Okay. Now, if we look at the government tax collection data, what is the government is saying? Government is saying that in case of GST, the tax collection has grown consistently. Although in the announcement it was that it has consistently grown, but we can see that in financial year 21, this was the COVID year, where the average collection has gone down. Then since then it has been continuously increasing. So if a statement comes that the average monthly GST collection has been continuously increasing for last 5 years, would it be right or wrong? The statement is average monthly GST collection has been continuously increasing for last 5 years. Right or wrong? It's wrong. Okay, you are right that it is not continuously increasing for last 5 years. In the four year before, in financial year 21, it has reduced. Okay, there was this question if interim budget is not presented, is not given in the constitution, on what basis it is presented. So the constitution says that you have to present budget. Now whether this budget would be interim budget or normal budget is convention. This convention has been developed by the government. Now the next thing is that government has given a data about direct tax collection, that the direct tax collection has tripled. Direct tax collection has tripled since 2014. ठीक है, I mean 3 times बढ़ गया है, and the number of taxpayer, this number has become 2.4 times in last 10 years. So this is the data that you can use whenever there is a question about tax evasion, tax avoidance or black money, that in recent times the government has been able to crack down on tax evasion. The number of taxpayer has been increasing, and so is the direct tax collection, and that's why you can also use that now the gap between direct tax and indirect tax collection is also increasing. And on this front, I would also like to say that there has been no change in tax structure. In this year budget, the government did not make any change in tax structure, which whatever was there last year. In fact, the exemption or special grants that have been given to the startups, that has also been continued in this year budget. So there is no change in tax structure in this year budget. ठीक है. One more thing that government has said is that the state governments have witnessed tax buoyancy. Tax buoyancy is simply like, see, normally if GDP is growing, so your tax collection will also grow. Yes, Megha, you are right. ED के खौफ से जो है tax collection बढ़ गया है. So normally, if your tax collection is GDP is growing, simply GDP is growing means income is growing. So income is growing, a certain percentage of that income will go to the government. So the government tax collection will also grow. Okay, but if it so happens that GDP is growing by say 8% and the tax collection grows by say 10%, we call such a scenario as tax buoyancy, when the tax collection by the government grows at a higher rate than the tax collected by than the GDP growth. This is called tax buoyancy. Now this is something which can be asked, and Finance Minister has said that the state GST revenue has witnessed tax buoyancy. A state GST revenue has witnessed tax buoyancy, and the tax buoyancy which was in pre-GST period, that the tax buoyancy was 0.72. In GST regime, or what you will call SGST regime, the tax buoyancy has been 1.22. Okay, so because of this, the Finance Minister was giving the argument that GST is a good reform that we have brought. However, see, we would have to see, I mean, the devils will lie into the detail, because in this, there has also been, in this GST period, there has also been a period when we have witnessed negative growth rate in 2020. Okay, so we would have to see that in post 2020, post COVID period, where there has been any tax buoyancy or not. The period that matter is after financial year 2021. Okay, and so these things will come into the Hindu editorial in the upcoming week. Don't worry about that. The next aspect is the one word which has been used in this year budget, like Finance Minister has not made any changes, but rather Finance Minister has said that these are also the good things that we have done. One is presumptive taxation. This is the word. So if we look at the conceptual aspect of presumptive taxation, the conceptual aspect, the economic concept is there that if there is a tax which is not on the actual income, rather on the presumption that you have had an income, that would be called presumptive taxation. Okay, that there is a presumption that you have had an income. That's why you are being taxed. Okay. Now, in Income Tax Act, there has been certain provisions for presumptive taxation. So, one of the example that we, if we look at this simple concept of presumptive taxation, one of the very best example is minimum alternate tax. In minimum alternate tax, the government says that see, you have to simply pay tax on your book profit. Minimum 18% tax आप हमें दे दो, बाकी आप जो करना है करो. Now, presumptive taxation is also that a kind of simplification. So, like if there is a professional, like जो doctors are there, advocates are there, so they are not acting as an individual. They are acting as a kind of doing some kind of a business. Okay, they have to maintain a office. There is an expenditure for maintenance of office. They have to hire some staff. Okay, so in actual sense, what should happen is that they have some revenue. They have some expenditure on maintaining that office, and whatever is their profit, they should be made to pay taxes on that profit. Okay, but for an individual professional, it can become a burdensome task. So government said that let's simplify this regime. Rather than paying taxes or rather than going into all this detailing, we will presume that you have had certain income, and based on that presumption you will have to pay tax. So there are two broad categories of presumptive taxation which are there in Income Tax Act. Yes, 44A(d), and there are other sections as well. Those sections are not important, so that's why I am not telling you. This concept of presumptive taxation is important, and a statement can be asked that whether this is a part of Income Tax Act or this is a part of GST Act or some other Custom Duty Act or some other act would be mentioned. Okay, so this is part of Income Tax Act. This is a kind of direct taxation. Now, small retail businesses, they have to pay some taxes. So for them, it would be presumed that if their say business is less than 3 crore rupees. Okay, so this was increased from 2 crore to 3 crore. So simply they have to say that if they are doing the total business of 3 crore up to 3 crore, 8% of that business is their profit. It would be assumed. So if I have done a business of 1 crore rupees, it would be presumed that 8 lakh is my profit and I will pay tax on 8 lakh rupees. Okay. Now the next is for case of individual professionals, the limit was earlier 50 lakh, which was increased to 75 lakh. So like for example, if a professional is there and that professional is say doing a business of say 60 lakh rupees. Okay, so for professional, the profit would be considered as 50%. So simply it would be presumed that his profit is say 30 lakh rupees and he will have to pay income tax on this 30 lakh rupees only. He need not maintain a book and account to show that his profit is 30 lakh. It is presumed that his profit is 40 lakh. So that's why the nomenclature presumptive taxation. Is it now clear, Subham? So it is not on income, rather on profit. Okay. So it is presumed that if you are making some income, you are making profit as well. That is the presumption. And since these are the income which are in, I mean, usually on businesses, there is tax on profit only. It is only the salaried class. That's why this middle class is not happy with the government, because we have to pay taxes on our income, and then we have to do expenditure. And when we do expenditure, then also we have to pay GST. So we are just paying taxes all round. Whereas the businesses or the business class, they subtract their expenditure first, and then from profit they pay taxes. Yes, Sima, you are right that if there is a digital receipt, then this 8% reduces further to 6%. I mean, we are not preparing for income tax, na? So that's why I'm not going to that detail. That is not important. Even this 8% is not important. Important is this concept of presumptive taxation. ठीक है? And और ज़्यादा डिटेल में गए तो ये होगा कि whether it is applicable on some professionals and small businesses or big businesses. वो गलत statement बनाने के लिए they will write that it is applicable on big corporate. That's not true. It is on small businesses on which it is applicable. ठीक है? So it's good, Sima, that you have prepared these things in detail. Now these are the concept part. These concepts can be asked. Don't worry about the math. Not important. Important is only concept and the terminologies. Next is revenue receipt and capital receipt. The income part, if we go to that. As you can see, as we have already said, that in the direct taxes we have witnessed buoyancy. So what we were expecting 26.3 lakh crore, now we are expecting that it would be surpassed, and we will generate revenue of around 27 lakh crore. Okay, and next year we are even more optimistic. Next year we are saying that our revenue would be around 30 lakh crore. In case of capital receipt front, we had estimated 18.7 lakh crore, but actual we are now saying that we would only be having the capital receipt of 17.9 lakh crore. Now it is, please tell me whether this reduction of capital receipt is good or bad, and if so, why so? Whatever be your reasoning, whether it is good or bad, what is the reason behind this? We will also have a part of this session tomorrow. So tomorrow 9 PM also we shall meet. The link would be different, but I would post that link on my Telegram channel. Atmanirbhar? No. See, this, it is simple. See, government has to do a total expenditure of say 100 rupees. Out of this 100 rupees, government was having its own revenue of say 80 rupees, and then 20 rupees is something that government has to borrow. This borrowing is part of capital receipt. Now this 80, as we have seen here, 80 has increased by 1. So probably 80 has increased to 81. So the government needs to borrow less. The government now needs to borrow only 19 rupees. So if this has increased, commensurately this has reduced. This has increased by say 0.7 lakh crore, and this is reduced by 0.8 lakh crore. So similar amount is there. Okay, so only thing that you have to digest is that this capital receipt also includes the borrowing, and so the government's borrowing has reduced. In fact, in fiscal deficit also, the government has a fiscal deficit target of 5.9% of GDP. But now it is saying that this year the fiscal deficit would only be 5.8%. Why? Because less amount of borrowing has been done, because the direct tax collection has been more. So it is not bad per se. It would have been bad had there been you got to look into the detail rather. Okay, what is the reason why there is less of capital receipts? Okay. So capital receipt would be borrowing only. It would be kind of loan. Other capital receipt could be if you are selling the share of some companies. Okay, so that is also a kind of reduction in asset. So either there would be reduction in asset or there would be increase in liability. These are only two ways through which you can have capital receipt. So high amount of capital receipt is also not good. तो ये थोड़ा सा काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव है, जो काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव नहीं काउंटर इंट्यूटिव है, जो हमें कॉमन सेंस से लगता है उसका उल्टा है. सो दिस इज समथिंग दैट यू नीड टू बी केयरफुल. Next year we are further ambitious that now the capital receipt would further reduce because we want to go to the path of fiscal consolidation. Okay, there is this word fiscal consolidation. So fiscal consolidation means nutshell में आप मानो that the government is reducing the fiscal deficit. So during COVID, the fiscal deficit has reached to 9.2% of GDP. Now the government says that by financial year 2025-26, the fiscal deficit would be 4.5% of GDP. So now we are continuously every year reducing our fiscal deficit. Okay, the next thing that the government has said that this year, as compared to our target that we have set in our budget, which was 5.9%, fiscal deficit would be 5.8% only. Now you understand why the fiscal deficit has reduced. This is very uncommon. Normally, fiscal deficit is always overshoots the target. But this year, it has not overshoot because our tax collection has been high. There has been tax buoyancy. Now we have put a target. This target can often be asked of 5.1% of GDP in this financial year 2024-25. In this financial year, so this year 5.8 we are going to achieve, next year 5.1, and next to next year we will reach 4.5%. Sejal is asking a doubt कि how more capital receipt won't be good. See, capital account is by definition there is a change in asset or liability. This is if there is a change in asset or liability, there is going to be this transaction is going to be recorded in capital account. Now there is receipt. Receipt means money has been received by government. Money received. Now when will government receive the money? If government takes a loan, there is increase in liability, or government can sell something. So government has an asset which government sold and in return government received money. So either there is going to be reduction in asset or there is going to be increase in liability. These are the two possibilities under which there is going to be capital receipt. Now, if either of the two is high, it is not good. If you are selling a lot of asset, a lot of reduction in your asset column, that is also not good, because if asset is reducing, your future income is going to be jeopardized. At the same time, if you are taking too much of loan, that is also not good, because too much of loan ultimately future generation have to pay. So ultimately, if there is a high capital receipt today, the probably future generation is going to be burdened. Either their source of income is going to be curtailed by reduction in asset, or they have to do a lot of future repayment of loan which current government is taking. So after a point of time, it may not remain sustainable. A small amount of capital receipt would always be there. Okay? We always have this fiscal deficit. We have also, you might already have discussed it, that a developing country will always have a deficit budget. So that's all that we will be having in today's session. In tomorrow's session, we shall be covering about various aspects of various schemes and all those details that Finance Minister has talked about, Biksit Bharat, uh, some amount of schemes, etc. That we shall be discussing in tomorrow's session. So tune in tomorrow 9 p.m. as well. Okay. And if you have not liked the channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do like this video and share this video with as many people as possible. Welfare motive also compromises government role decreases with reduction in capital asset. Also compromises government role decreases with reduction in capital asset. Well, that may or may not be true. You are probably saying that the government takes loan to do the welfare activities. So if government is not taking as much of loan, welfare expenditure, but in our case, the government has reduced this loan by increasing its income. So this is a good thing. If capital receipt is reducing because there is more tax revenue, that is good finance. But if it has happened because there is less of capital expenditure, then that would have been a kind of bad finance. Okay. However, it has also happened. We have seen also when expenditure, revenue expenditure and effective capital expenditure we were discussing. We have also seen that in case of effective capital expenditure also, government has revised its target downward. Whereas in case of revenue expenditure, government has overshot its estimate. So on that front, government has not done well. Normally, if it had happened that revenue expenditure has decreased and capital expenditure has increased, that was good thing, because capital expenditure is leading to asset creation, increase in future income. ठीक है, काफी सारी चीजें मैंने हवा हवा में बोल दी है, तो ये अगर नहीं समझ में आया है तो पॉज करके दोबारा प्ले कर लेना है और पीछे का वीडियो जा करके देखना है. ठीक है, उस वीडियो में आपको क्लैरिटी आ जाएगी. The PPT would be shared on my Telegram channel. The link of my Telegram channel is there in the description of the video. See you again tomorrow night. Good night. Take care. One more thing. If you have any doubt left, you can always put in the comment section. We can discuss. I would be happy to reply all your doubts.